Yeah, I'm afraid so. I'm afraid there is, part of the reason why I wrote the book was also to tell the West that at the end of the day, my message is an optimistic one. The Asians, as they rise, do not want to dominate the West. They want to replicate the West. They want to create modern, open, middle-class societies in Asia, as you have in the West. And so the West should reach out today and establish new partnerships on the basis of equality and not on the basis of domination. And the West should stop insisting that it should continue to control all these global institutions. I mean, even today you have a rule that says to become the head of the IMF, you must be a European. To become the head of the World Bank, you must be an American. And guess what? 3.5 billion Asians who now have the world's fastest growing economies, who have the world's largest pool of foreign reserves, $3 trillion, and who now probably produce more PhDs in economics than the West does. Guess what? We don't qualify to run the IMF or the World Bank. Now that's the kind of absurd anachronism that has got to be removed. I think globalization is a wonderful thing. And indeed, the remarkable thing is that the West, as you know, created globalization. But the paradox you have today is that even though the West created globalization, the West is now afraid of globalization, increasingly so, and while the East is embracing globalization. In fact, one of my predictions for the 21st century is that you will see the Asianization of globalization, where the Asians will say, hey, we love globalization because in an open, level playing field we can compete and we can succeed. So in the business sector, for example, businessmen are aware of the importance of Asia. Businessmen realize that you've got to have, all the major multinational companies realize, you cannot have a global strategy without having a China strategy or an India strategy. But you see, whereas the business minds have been open to the new prospects in Asia, policymakers' minds have not been open, and they still remain rooted in the past. And that's why I had to write the book at this point in time. It is, it's very strange because you know, if you are so used to doing things in a certain way, you got so used to the United States seeing the UN Security Council as an instrument for the United States to use for its foreign policy. But that's not what the Security Council was designed to do. It was designed to provide a global perspective, to get views of the whole world on what needs to be done. But the US has been so dominant for so long that it cannot accept the idea that it's got to share power with the rest of the world. The big lesson of history is that when you enjoyed power for so long, it's very hard to give it up, very hard to change. Take, for example, the G8, okay? The G8 are supposed to represent the leading economies of the world, but increasingly they represent the economies of the past and not the economies of the future. But just try and persuade the G8 members, hey, it's time for me to leave, make way for the new rising economic powers. They won't. There's a resistance to change. And the West has always said, we are the most open, we are the most flexible societies, but when it comes to the crunch, they refuse to change.